Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Omri Farragon, and I'm the owner-operator of Storage Guardian. I want to thank everybody taking their time out in a busy September to join us for a webinar that Storage Guardian is hosting. I wanted to introduce you today's panelists, my associate Aaron Chan, who is a project manager, sales engineer at Storage Guardian, and a Storage Guardian strategic partner, Phil Yangi from HyAlto, who will be doing a live demonstration of a failover into the Storage Guardian environment utilizing the HyAlto platform and how it all plays together within the disaster recovery as a service offering that Storage Guardian has worked on in the last year or so. I wanted to introduce you initially to Aaron, who will be talking about a little bit what Storage Guardian has been up to during the pandemic and how we prepared for disaster recovery as a service in context of monitoring and managing DR as a service. Go ahead, Aaron.
Thank you very much. Hi, guys. My name is Aaron. And like Omri mentioned, I'm a project manager and a sales engineer here at Storage Guardian. So let's talk disaster recovery. But before that, let's talk disaster. What are the disaster traditionally? Well, disaster recovery is the process of responding to and recovering from an event that impedes business operation. Traditionally, these are infrequent events. So we have our natural disaster and infrastructure failure. More recently, there's been a shift. So the shift comes from the rise of malicious cybercrime groups, evolving malicious software such as malware and ransomware hackers, but also ransomware as a service. You can now contract out ransomware to target specific business and sectors. That means disaster, there is now a new type of disaster, and ransomware is one of them. Not only is ransomware a new type of disaster, it's also highly likely. So something that is infrequent has changed to something that is highly likely and highly frequent. Let's talk about the current landscape. This is the landscape of the current cybersecurity market. We're looking at 68% of cybersecurity attacks consist of small and medium-sized business. 3 in 10 organizations have seen a spike during the pandemic. Ransomware payment has jumped 60% from $111,000 to $178,000 USD. Remote working has made our life easier and making small and medium-sized business able to function during the pandemic, but we also see that remote work has increased the average cost of data breach to $178,000, which is increasing it by almost $137,000. Projection-wise, we're looking at the worldwide information security market to be forecasted to reach $70.4 billion in 2022. As you can see in this graph provided by Data Breach, ransomware payment has jumped significantly from Q3 of 2018 to Q2 of 2020, almost 8 exponential growth. And this is becoming a more and more serious problem in our industry. The title of this webinar is Disaster Recovery. What have you done for us lately? And this basically is our question on how have DR changed throughout this process, throughout the shift. And one of the things we did is we aligned our DR process. We matched the right technology with today's threat. Now I'm going to pass it on to Omri to talk about Storage Guardian's redefinition of disaster recovery.
So the way we've gone to market with disaster recovery as a service is taking back the ownership of it from the IT department and put it in the hands of C-level management, owner-operators, because the extortionists that are causing the ransom know that your credibility in the market, your reputation in the market will be smeared if you are not able to operate. And so no longer is it a function of IT for resiliency and making sure that equipment has redundancy, but rather it becomes your reputation in the market. It becomes your dependencies from a supply chain, and also your financial obligations, which is more of a management. And so what I did as an owner operator is I thought of the problem from the 5 W's: the who, what, when, where, and the one, how. And really, the how is not a function of IT, but the how is a function of the person who is most responsible for the declaration of disaster recovery, because they're most responsible to answer the public and all the obligations that the business has. And the problem is, while the C-level's responsibility to have the declaration, it's in their responsibility, the obligation, the way the IT has run is most suitably done by the IT professional. So you have this scenario that it's that the extortionists, the ransomware, are exploiting, which is not planning, being side-blinded by a source of responsibility, that being compounded by your reputation. And it's, unfortunately, it's easier, to pay the extortionist the ransom, whether it's, $10,000 or $5,000 just to get rid of this problem. But, these are criminal-minded people, and they like to exploit, or mug people that are easy to. And so that's not the right approach. The right approach to deliver disaster, is to plan for it and use common technology that's easy to access. And so the way we will go on to market with disaster recovery as a service is to build a service board that's easy to monitor, and then bring that to the CEO level and use easy to use technology, because you've been sideblinded, like interactive voice, to make the declaration and let the service providers you've contracted or the IT department know that you'd like to fail over into disaster recovery. And that's the unique mechanism that Storage Guardian has built over the pandemic, is how to incorporate easy to use technologies such as interactive voice response or texting to let the IT professionals know that you'd like to go into a declaration, and then of course incorporate that into a validation, into a testing mode. And so the other key area that we'd like to discuss with disaster recovery is testing. And testing can be expensive. Certainly in the 20 years we've been in business, we've done work with provincial, federal, and government level, and they have large budgets to plan for this. For the small, mid-sized businesses where the budgets are tight, what we've done is we've implemented a warm mode where you can either back up your data to a cold repository, or replicate into a warm VM by understating your workloads. And what I want to do is I want to run a live demonstration where we've taken a warm copy of data in a replicated environment. We want to build out a statement of work which dictates that. We want to create a service board that plans for that, and then we want to use the HyAlto platform to go from warm to hot, which basically means you're understating your workloads from a virtual machine. You've gone through the declaration saying that you want to go from warm to hot, and then giving an access to somebody saying, that you want to fail over and use the workloads on the Storage Guardian cloud in a hot environment and allow you to test it. And that's really, it should be as testing once a year to make sure that your assumptions are worked, making sure that all the stakeholders know what they need to do, and and then testing it out. Now, I want to introduce you to Panelists, a key strategic partner by the name of Phil, to go through the spin up of the test and ask any questions along the way. The floor is yours, Phil.
Hi everyone, my name is Phil. I'm a sales engineer with HyAlto, and I'm teaming up with the Storage Guardian team here to show everybody. Can we stay on the slides, please, for now? I need to go through a few slides before I share my screen.
Yeah, sorry about that. That's my bad. 1 second, please. Go ahead.
I'm going to go through with you a mock DR into Storage Guardian's cloud. But before I do so, I'll just explain a bit who HyAlto is, what we do, and how HyAlto plays in this whole process. Next slide, please. So HyAlto is a software company. We provide a SaaS application that sits on top of service providers like Storage Guardian's private clouds. Our application has a portal for the private cloud provider to configure workloads and automate provisioning and streamline their private cloud operations built on VMware. HyAlto also offers a cloud user portal where the sophisticated cloud user that's tech savvy enough, who wants to manipulate and manage their own workloads in the private cloud, can do so. It acts as a self-service engine, self-service portal, and allows the user to make changes to the resources, those workloads living in the Storage Guardian data center. Next slide, please. Who is HyAlto? We have 10 years in business. We were an IaaS provider 10 years ago. That's our roots. We built a VMware data center with data centers throughout North America, the US, Canada, and the UK, and catering and selling workloads and virtual machines directly to enterprise clients. But since then, we're now a total SaaS application. We're a pure software provider. We license our technology for other service providers to deploy into their VMware data centers and allow an easy-to-use self-service management and provisioning layer to their end customers and partners. We're headquarters in Canada, and we serve MSPs and cloud solution providers globally. Next slide, please. What is HyAlto? We're an application that sits on top of VMware. We integrate with VMware vCenter, vCloud Director, as well as NSX. We'll be coming out with some public cloud integrations very soon in early 2022. Because we're an application, we track the usage of all the workloads that are loaded in the data center. And we can provide a report for the service providers that gives a detailed consumption of what RAM, CPU, and storage each customer is consuming in that private cloud data center. We integrate with ConnectWise Manage on the PSA side, as well as Datto Autotask, your favorite PSAs. And for those of you using ERP systems, we can export all this data into a spreadsheet to re-import into your billing or invoicing system in your ERP. Next slide, please. And here we are. I'll set the stage. Make me presenter, please, at this point, and I'll set the stage. I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to pretend I am an MSP who's partnered with Storage Guardian. As an MSP, I may manage some workloads on-prem for my customers. Let me show my window here. So here I am. I'm on an on-prem data center. The name of the company is Black Rooster Inc., Pictures Company. And that company has 3 VMs on-prem that I'm managing on their behalf. And I've agreed to a DR as a service from Storage Guardian. So in advance, we've already set up the DR technology. Could be a multitude of choices, could be Veeam replicating, Zerto, or any other standby VM or replica VM technology. We've set up a backup server to replicate 30 servers, the domain controller, DC01, app server, app01, and a file server, FileServer01, to the Storage Guardian data center. Right now, those VMs are sitting dormant and they're just consuming storage. That's it. They're not consuming RAM or CPU. What we're going to do here is going to simulate a hardware failure or a site blackout happening at this site, where the DR plan that you've agreed to with Storage Guardian would be invoked. So let me power out these virtual machines as if a catastrophe has happened. And we've just effectively simulated a catastrophe happening at the on-prem data center. So now we are completely down. Nothing's accessible on-prem. As the end customer, you may notify your managed service provider, or you may directly invoke your DR plan that you've agreed to with Storage Guardian. Once invoked, as the MSP, I log into the Storage Guardian HyAlto portal here. I log into, and I may have multiple customers that I'm managing the environments, and I'm replicating to Storage Guardian's private cloud. In this case, Black Rooster. So let's log into Black Rooster's tenant here. So I've logged into Black Rooster's tenant. These are the replica VMs that are sitting in Storage Guardian's private cloud data center. We've replicated 3 VMs, file server 01, the domain controller, and the app server. We didn't replicate the backup server because it's not necessary in this case. I need to invoke a DR. What do I do? Well, it's as simple as powering on the machines. Let me change the power state here. We'll start with a domain controller. That domain controller provides authentication services for the domain and the network, and it needs to be on for the other servers to power on and authenticate to the domain properly. But I may know that, hey, I'm in a failover situation. Most of my users use desktops to connect to the applications. Those desktops connect. What I may want to do is I may want to change this application server into an RDS server, or I may want to increase the resources for these servers to accommodate for the disaster. And I can easily do and modify this virtual machine to accommodate for additional resources. It's running at 4 cores, 16 gigs of RAM, and it has a 60 gigabyte storage right now. Maybe I'm expecting a lot more usage. I may need to double the capacity on this virtual machine. Let me increase the CPU or the RAM. Let's say 24 gigabytes is what's needed, and I may need to add 2 more cores to accommodate the new demands. I'm going to modify the virtual machine. Just a moment, I just need to set up the network. Okay, as the networks are set up, I will power on the virtual machines. And using HyAlto, I can connect to the consoles of these virtual machines and assess whether or not they're powered on. Bear with me a second. I have security warnings here as the data center is using self-signed certificates. Just one moment as I approve these certificates on my machine. I just must trust this unsigned certificate. I'll give you another moment here. Omri, while I do this, could you maybe talk about the DR process, how the DR plan would get invoked?
Sure. So, Phil is showing, the sort of like a big show before and after the fact from a failover point of view and all the ingredients it takes to bake a cake. While that's, hydrating in the background, it's the case that the network and how to get a hold of the key individuals to go from cloud A to cloud B, needs to be, gotten a hold of. And it's, often it's the case, it's not the thought of the human capital, so to speak. And so part of the statement of work that Storage Guardian works on with is the technology on how to get a hold of people. What type of access are they going to need once they fail over into the cloud, and what is the access control they're going to need to? And that's part of the statement of work, the customer responsibility matrix that we work on together with you to ensure that the failover is not only done from an IT point of view, but also from the whole team point of view. And those are areas that Storage Guardian, Aaron Chen, and myself have worked on during the pandemic to refine, and then of course to validate and test out all those assumptions. From our point of view, when we're able to root out the problems during a test recovery, it means it's one less thing you need to work on in a real life scenario. And so we pat ourselves on the back, showing that it's not going to work out on its own. It's something you need to work for. Okay.
Great. So now that I've got the certificate trusted here, bear with me a second. I'm logging back in, and we'll hit the virtual machine console. My pop-up blocker allows it. And we're visiting the console here of this virtual machine. So Sage, all of my virtual machines that were originally failover replicas are now powered on while my original on-prem equipment has failed. I can connect to those workloads via the console or other means, whether it be RMM tools or RDP, to these virtual machines, and keep operating as if that disaster never happened. This in a nutshell is really how you can use Storage Guardian's private cloud and DR as a service technology to replicate all of those customer workloads, all your workloads or your end customers' workloads to the data center. And in the event of a failure, can manage the startup of all these virtual machines and all these workloads on behalf of your customers or on behalf of yourself if you're an end customer.
Okay,
Thanks.
Thank you so much for that demonstration. If I could get the screen back, please. Thank you very much. So let's talk about 2021 and beyond. We covered our technology for DR. The video of this technology and this webinar will be sent out to all the users and attendants for the webinar. But I kind of want to highlight on what we have coming up in 2021. So in 2021 and beyond, what we have is we're going to focus more on disaster and disaster recovery. We're going to talk about insurance integration with our DR runbook. Currently, our DR runbook talk about how to declare a disaster and how to recover from a disaster, as Phil has shown. But we are integrating insurance, ransomware insurance, risk analysis, and mitigation into our DR runbook as well. The last thing you want to do when you are hit with a disaster is to panic. With our DR runbook, you will know that everything you need to know, all the information you need to declare, and everyone you need to call is in our DR runbook. We're going to have a webinar discussing CM and its integration and monitoring into your system. So endpoint monitoring and detection response. We're going to ensure our client meet the regulatory requirement to enable compliance, and how EDR plays a key in monitoring your log file, identify and correlate events, and even recover from a threat or a successful attack. we're also talking about private cloud and how private cloud, the technology of private cloud is advancing in such a way that in large quantity of backup, private cloud is the way to go instead of using the public cloud. And then, of course, lastly, EDR, more on EDR, endpoint protection and monitoring, providing a added security and recovery from the ever-growing devices that can access your network. And that ends today's webinar. We have a brief Q&A session. If anyone have any questions, feel free to ask during this time. Also, please feel free to type your questions in the chat box. Okay, if that's the case, guys, thank you so much for coming to today's webinar. Like I said, the video of this webinar shall be sent to those that signed up for the webinar, but it's also available on our website, www.storageguardian.com/webinar. I'll be sending those information out as well. And I hope to see you guys in our sessions throughout the year and over to next year.